Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode with me, your host, Michael Labs. I hope everyone's doing well out there in this beautiful, beautiful world, this beautiful country of ours, America, the United States of America. Still, in my opinion, by far the greatest country in the world. By far the greatest nation that's ever existed. I know you can make an argument for like the Roman Empire and stuff like that, but in terms of freedom, inequality, and opportunity, no other country, no other nation, no other empire has come close. And that's kind of going to be the pocket that I stay in for this episode. Um, I have seen a lot happen in the past 2 weeks that's been very upsetting to me. I've talked about it with Taylor. I've talked about it with a lot of people. Well, not really a lot of people, just Taylor. And I've thought about it. And in this episode, I'm going to kind of just give my opinion on everything from our president, cancel culture, Andrew Tate, and just the market, and just kind of masculinity, and just be very honest with everybody. And this is going to be an episode where, I think a lot of people are going to listen to and not be the most supportive, not be happy, and that's okay with me. Because at the end of the day, I know who I am. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm loved by a lot of people. I know I care about humans, and I know what I am. I'm an American. I love this country, and I always have, and I always will. So, about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we were in a situation in this country where we were very divided, right? We were, it was coming down to the election for 2020, and there was a lot of people who were very, very, very staunch Donald Trump supporters. They would follow this man anywhere. They would do whatever he said. They would listen to anything he said, and they were very extreme in a lot of ways. And then there was a lot of people who were Republicans that weren't necessarily Donald Trump supporters, but Donald Trump was the Republican candidate. 74 million people voted for him. And I would say 74 million people, not all of them wanted to. Not all of them felt the need, the want for him to be president again. But they didn't want Joe Biden to be president. Donald Trump was a president that was outspoken. He was a renegade. He was not liked by a lot of people. He was definitely not liked by the system. The system's paid off. In order to run for president, you need money. And in order to get money, you need to raise money. And you get money from huge organizations, huge businesses. And these organizations and businesses have viewpoints that they believe and that they push, and they benefit depending on who is running for president and who wins for president. Donald Trump, obviously, he was not a big fan of EVs. He was not a big fan of companies that produce electric cars. He was a big petroleum guy. He loved oil. So oil companies, petroleum was definitely giving Donald Trump a lot of money to be president again. A lot of EV companies, a lot of environmentally friendly organizations, whatever that means, were anti-Donald Trump. They wanted Joe Biden in office. Donald Trump was very divisive in the sense that he would say things like the loony left. He would say things like fake news. He would other a lot of people. And he did a great job othering a lot of people. And as he was othering a lot of people took his side. They believed everything he said. I have family members who believe every single thing Donald Trump said. And I know people in my life that hate Democrats and everything about them. They call them the loony left. They call them, communist, Marxist, socialist. And they use these terms as very demeaning, even though communism, socialism, Marxism are all ideas, political ideas, and they could potentially work. They just haven't worked successfully yet. But we take ideas from each thing. And as we were closing in on 2020, going into the election, there was a lot of people who used COVID as a political stance. They took COVID and they kind of pinned it up as Donald Trump is the cause for the spread of COVID. He's the cause of a lot of people dying. So he went from somebody who was just represented a group of racist people, Nazis, because I don't know if you remember, but there was this narrative that if you supported Donald Trump, you're a racist. There was this narrative that if you supported Donald Trump, you were a Nazi, that you hated people, that that you were a certain type of character that they painted you as. And that just wasn't true. That wasn't true, but people believed it. On the same side, people who were staunch Trump supporters believed that if you were on the left, you were a socialist, that you hated America. And then the news stations took over, and then COVID completely divided the country. COVID was very easy to divide a country on, because at the time we believed that masks worked. They don't. We believed that the vaccines worked and they were the only way out of it. They don't. And if you took a stance saying that vaccines don't work, I don't want a vaccine, you were labeled as an anti-vaxxer. It didn't matter if you had all the other vaccines. It didn't matter if as a child you got all the vaccines and you continue to get the flu shot each year. If you took a stance that I don't know exactly what this vaccine is, I don't really trust the studies, I don't like the fact that we can't see the documents for 75 years or locked away for 70 plus years, I don't really want to put that in my body. Well, if you took that stance, you were, anti-vaxxer, you wanted to kill grandma. You weren't just somebody who wanted to make their own decisions for themselves. And then that divided everyone even more. You othered people. So much so that it was so easy. If you were somebody who didn't want to wear a mask, then you were a grandma killer. That you could literally put a piece of plastic or paper across your face and you knew who that person was, and you knew who that person wasn't. If they wore a bandana, you knew who that person was. They were going to follow rules, but they didn't want to follow the rules. And then if you wore 2 masks, 3 masks, you knew who that person was. And the politics started using this as like a base to run against each other. And then the nonsense started. Trump, started calling out Biden. Biden started calling out Trump, and lies started happening. Kamala Harris and Biden both said that they would never take the vaccine that was produced under the Trump administration, even though Trump is the reason why the vaccines got out so quickly. He's also the reason why people got money so quickly. I mean, he is the reason why we got vaccines within a year. He was also somebody who wanted people to get the vaccine. He's publicly said, get the vaccine, they're great. But this narrative took place where if you're a Trump supporter, you're anti-vax. That wasn't true, because Trump was pro-vaccines. He just wasn't pro everyone having to get forced to take the vaccines. Everything got shut down. People lost their businesses. People lost their jobs. This gentleman by the name of Fauci said that he never told businesses to shut down, and then there's clips of all him saying is just shut things down. And we got to this point where this nation became so divided. And in 2020, we thought that the president, Joe Biden, to be very honest with everybody, I did not vote for Joe Biden. I couldn't get behind this guy, because I would watch him in interviews and I watch him talk, and he reminded me of my grandfather. My grandfather has Alzheimer's. I'm not even like trying to be hyperbolic here. Like, that's what he reminded me of. He reminded me as a very old man who's lived a good life, successful life, a long life, someone who's been through a lot of trauma, but is also somebody who has a lot of brain damage, and he just can't function. And he shouldn't be running a country. He shouldn't have the most powerful position in the entire world, because he can't think straight. He mumbles. He can't finish sentences. I couldn't vote for that. I also couldn't vote for somebody who, has been on the record as calling black people animals, who's been on the record saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. I couldn't vote for somebody who signed off with the 1994 drug act with Bill Clinton that was responsible for putting hundreds of thousands of African-American males behind bars. I couldn't get behind somebody like that. A lot of people could. A lot of people just assumed since he wasn't Trump, he was God sent. I couldn't get behind someone like Donald Trump, even though a lot of his economic plans were plans I supported, things I liked. There was a lot of things I liked about him, but the things I didn't like, I couldn't get around. I couldn't get around the way he would name call people, the way he was aggressive towards people, the way he would demean people, because I don't want that to be my president either. So I took, I guess, the easy way out. I voted for Joe Jurgensen, who's a libertarian. I identify as a libertarian in a lot of ways. And that's who I voted for. And a lot of people voted that year. You know, a lot of people voted. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a lot of campaigning in the media. There's a lot of campaigning on the news, social media. Everything was like, vote. Your vote matters. Vote, 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 vote. And we ended up losing Donald Trump, and we ended up winning Joe Biden. And I remember when Joe Biden took office, and then obviously all that January 6th stuff happened. I remember when he took office, he said things, if you voted for me, if you voted against me, we're one country. We're going to bring this country. We're going to build this country back better. I think that was his slogan, build back better. And we were all hoping that that's what was going to happen. We were all hoping that he was going to bring the country together. And within the past 2 years, he's done the complete opposite. He's splintered us apart worse than ever. Last week, during prime time on September 1st, he had an opportunity to go up there and say, we're divided in this country. We have our issues. We don't see eye to eye. We need to come together. We need to remember the backbone of this country. We need to treat the middle class with respect. We need to promote business building. We need to reduce taxes. And we need to make education more easy for people to obtain. And we need to be America again. And we need to remember why we are the beacon of hope for the rest of the world, especially now since there's a massive war in Ukraine. And there's potentially a hot war coming with China and Taiwan. If they attack Taiwan, we will intervene. But he didn't. He got on there and he divided the country worse than ever. He gave the worst speech in the history of any president of all time. And I'm saying this as objective as possible. I'm saying this as somebody who didn't vote for Donald Trump or didn't vote for Joe Biden. It was the worst, most upsetting, disgusting speech I've ever heard a president ever say. He was saying that the MAGA Republicans are the cause of the ruin of the democracy, that they're a threat to the country, that they are just 74 million. I mean, I don't want to pull it up, but it was horrible. The things he was saying, and then the week before he was saying things how they're semi-fascist. It's very sickening to see a president who has no autonomy of himself. He can't think for himself. The dude's dead. It's a dead man up there. And I mean that in all respect. He's a dead man. He's up there and he's barely getting by. He's barely able to think. You know, he's an idiot. He's a dummy. And then you have Kamala Harris, who's, instead of doing anything good for the country, she's out there telling people her pronouns before she gets up there and talks. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. I mean, we're a laughing stock right now. Meanwhile, China's falling apart. I did a clip on this talking about how China's economy is slowly, just crashing and falling apart. I mean, we're not doing much better. And I got a lot of pushback. I got a lot of pushback in the comments. Obviously a lot of people liked it, but a lot of comments would basically just tell me I was wrong, how China's having issues, just like we are having issues. And it was a lot of sympathizing for China, which was weird to me because I think there's a weird misunderstanding about what China is. China's not free. China is a communist country. They have camps where they put Uyghur Muslims. I mean, there was just an article, let me pull it up here, just last week, talking about China and the Uyghur Muslims. Let me pull it out real quick. China and Muslims. Yeah. So this came out, this was in The Guardian. This came out on September 1st. China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims may be a crime against humanity, says UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet issues a report. The outgoing United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet has said that China has committed, quote, serious human right violations against Uyghur Muslims in a province, which may amount to crimes against humanity. The report was published with only 11 minutes to go before her term came to an end at midnight Geneva time. Publication was delayed by the 11th hour delivery of an official Chinese response that contained names and pictures of individuals that had to be blacked out by the UN Commissioner's Office for Privacy and Safety reasons. The Chinese government, which attempted until the last moment to stop the publication of the report, rejected it as an anti-China smear. This is not this is real. This happens in China. Why Uyghur human rights groups hailed it was a turning point in the international response to the program of mass incarceration. The 45-page report by the Office of the High Commissioner for the Human Rights concluded, quote, the extent of arbitrary and discriminatory detention of members of Uyghurs and other predominantly Muslim groups, pursuant to law and policy, in context of restrictions and deprivation more generally of fundamental rights enjoyed individually and collectively, may constitute international crimes, in particular crimes against humanity. Beijing, which attempted until the last report to stop the publication of the report, said in an official response that it was, quote, based on the disinformation and lies fabricated by the anti-Chinese forces, and that it, quote, wantonly smears and slanders China and interfered in the country's international affairs. So basically what they were saying was, basically what I'm trying to say here is China's not a good place. It's a place where they control the people, they control the bank accounts. They cast out leaders of huge companies like Jack Ma. They just go disappear. That tennis player just disappeared. She released a video with her and a teddy bear in some weird room. But what worries me the most is this country is forgetting who we are, and I'm not a Republican. I identify as a libertarian. I'm somebody who is very, very Republican when it comes to money. I'm a staunch capitalist. I think capitalism is the only way for a country to succeed. But I'm also a capitalist with some regulations as well. I don't think the prisoners should run the jail. I think capitalism needs to be restrained by some form of government. I think government's job is to put in laws, put in taxes, so capitalism doesn't completely take over a whole nation. But I think there's limits on that. I don't think it's a job for the government to go to private media companies such as YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and remove people from platforms over something that they said or did not say. I don't think it's the government's right to step in and use my money to pay off someone else's debt after a decision that they made to go to college. I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong. I think that's a bad idea for the country. I don't think that if you have somebody like Joe Rogan and they have a huge podcast and in the middle of a pandemic, they say things that maybe aren't going with the narrative, that you try to cancel them, even though a year after you try to cancel them, everything that person said actually turned out to be true. I don't think a government should be in a position where they silence some doctors and let other doctors speak, aka Dr. Mahone, that guy who's on Joe Rogan, and then Dr. Peter McGilla. I think that's dangerous. And I think that's a place where our country has gotten, where I think we are in a position now where we think it's okay to silence people because we don't agree with what they say. And that is an attack on freedom of speech. I'm freedom of speech absolutist. I think everything and anything should be allowed to be said. I truly believe that. The only things I think threats are dangerous, but even racial things. I think you have the right to say any racial slur you want. And I don't mean that in the sense that you should, but I don't think you should be arrested for saying anything that offends somebody. I have seen, just last week alone, I saw the most aggressive and disturbing, Karen moment. It was by a guy. I was at McDonald's and I was waiting for food, and it was the DoorDash, and I ended up canceling the order or leaving the order and letting someone else do it. But I was just standing there, like waiting for the food, and this white dude goes up, and the guy who's working behind the counter is at McDonald's. He's missing an arm, and he's a black dude. And he works really hard. Like I go to that McDonald's probably 3-4 times a week for DoorDash, and he's like the best employee. Like when he's there, I'm very confident like my food's gonna get done. It was like 6:30, or it was like 7 o'clock, and there was like a shift change for that like midnight to 8 a.m. shift. So he was like the only guy. They had the drive-through going, and they had the walk-in going. And he was like the only employee there, and he was clearly getting crushed. And he also only has one arm, so it's a lot harder for him to move like it is for other people, which is crazy because he still works 5 times harder than everybody that works for him. And this guy comes up, and this dude just, I mean, he's a tall, skinnier white guy, and he gets in line, and he's trying to order, but the employee, the manager, is running around trying to get the drive-through, and the guy like screams, he's like, "I need a coffee," and then the guy's like, just give me 1 second. I'm busy right now. I got someone on hold. And that's when I started leaving. I started leaving because it was so busy and I didn't want to like bother him. And, I just wanted somewhere. I wanted to make money. So I didn't want to stay there and wait all day. And as I'm leaving, I hear him just starting to get louder. And I sit in my car, and he comes flying out. He's just screaming. He's like, that effing N-word. He just keeps on saying that. Like, and then he's turning around, just screaming that effing N-word, the N-word, just nonstop. And it was really uncomfortable. I'm in my car, like, do I got to get out? Like, what's going on here? Is it going to be an all-out fight? Should I call the cops? Does this guy have a gun? Because I'm in Virginia, you can carry guns. And I'm like, what the hell is going to happen? Dude comes flying out of his car, out of his parking spot, almost hits somebody. And then he takes off. And then he comes back, though. And then he pulls up next to a poor employee. Not like poor as in doesn't have money, but poor as in like this poor woman. And she's also a black woman. And she comes walking out of her car. She's really sweet. I talk to her all the time. She's I go to this McDonald's all the time. So I know the staff there. And this dude goes right up to her. And he just starts screaming at her. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And then she starts laughing. And he drives away. And then I hear her talk to some people in the parking lot. She's like, he does this all the time. Like, he's an absolute lunatic. He doesn't hurt us, but he just, he's clearly a racist mother effer. And it was just, it was really uncomfortable. And like, I don't know where I was going with that, but basically what I'm trying to say here is like, I do worry that people who listen to everything Joe Biden says truly believes everything he says. I don't believe anything that any politician ever says ever in the history of humankind. I didn't listen to anything Trump said. I thought he was a lunatic. He was funny. He was a funny dude. But it's the same reason why I like when they would say things like the left is crazy. I was like, no, they're not. I know plenty of people who are Democrats who are sweet human beings, like really nice people. Yeah, I know the ones who are insane, but I also know like even the insane ones are sweet people. They're just kind of, they're different, right? Like not in a bad way. Like I'm sure a lot of people look at me, they probably hate me, but that's okay. Like my goal isn't to be liked by everybody. But it was very upsetting to see this huge opportunity where the whole world's watching, and he could get up there and he could bring the country together, but he chose not to. He chose to divide the country more than ever. And what's even more disturbing is he did it, and those aren't his words. Those words were written for him, which means that like there's like an initiative right now by his administration to like I guess like bully like the Republicans into a state of like, I don't really know. I don't know what's happening, because like that didn't work. That doesn't work. You can't push people into a corner. They don't like back down. They will fight. And like I don't think that his administration really understands that when you continuously go after a group of people, you're losing people on your side. Because I know for me, like I go like, why is he so like, why is his goal right now to just bully a part of the country? And I think it's because he's terrified of that part of the country. Because I've said it on like 3 podcasts in a row, but I'll say it again. Like this country in 2024, Donald Trump will be the president of the United States of America, or um, Ron DeSantis will be the president of the United States of America. That's going to happen. There's already been like a million people who have flipped from Democrats to Republicans. Like, people are not happy. People are, because we've been lied to so much for the past year. You know, like they lied with the whole inflation thing. They kept on saying how it's transitory, how it's transitory. It wasn't transitory. You didn't. I mean, I sometimes get jaded because I watch the news all day, like not like CNN or Fox, but I watch like the stock market, Bloomberg or CNBC, and I'm watching the markets all day. So like economically, I'm up to date with everything. I kind of know like where a recession is, or like if we're in a recession, if we're not in a recession, which we are in a recession, but like for some reason they just keep on lying to us. Like, they tell us that we're not in a recession. And I kind of keep up to date with like inflation numbers, employment numbers, and everything like that. Like, so when they're telling us that inflation is transitory, but you can just go outside and you can see how expensive things are, you're like, I don't know if this is transitory. And then when they're talking about like passing a Build Back Better package, and they're sending all this money to Ukraine, you're like, I think we might be here for a while. And then you hear things like, that this debt package, student loan forgiveness, can cost anywhere from $300 to $900 billion over the next decade. You're like, well, that's a lot of money too. And they're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine on like a weekly basis. I mean, we're basically at war with Russia, right? We're basically at war with Russia, but by proxy. Like, yeah, we're not firing the weapons, but we're giving the weapons to the people that are then putting the bullets through Russians' heads, right? Like, we're at war with Russia by proxy, and like, that's, I truly believe with Taiwan, like, we're going to be at war with China by proxy with Taiwan. Like, I don't think that Taiwan's going to be, I think Taiwan will be at war within like the next 2 years with China. That's just what I personally believe. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see how I could be. I mean, I don't know. It seems like Taiwan's starting to like stand up to China, which I don't know. I don't feel like they have any capabilities to stand up to China, but we'll see, man. I don't know. It's fascinating, but that was very upsetting to see just the lack of care about bringing the country together. I don't know. That was very upsetting. I didn't like that. I didn't like seeing that. One second. Let me just pause this again. I would have liked him to go up there and been like, you know what? Yeah, we have our differences. We have our ups and downs, and we don't agree with everything that the Republicans say, but we hear you. We understand you. We understand your frustration, and we're here to help. Yeah, it's kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of just that speech that he gave. It was not fun. It was hard to watch. It was, a divided nation is what would take this country down. We're never going to get taken down by a country outside of us, but we will get taken down if we continue to treat each other like we're others, and we continue to call groups of people fascist or communist or socialist or whatever. I mean, this country's powerful. This country's rich. This country's intelligent. This country's set up to be successful. The only way that we get ourselves in a situation where it starts deteriorating is if we all turn on each other. And for some reason, it seems like that's the narrative and that's the goal of this current administration and the previous administration. And it seems like we live in a time period where we don't want to agree with anything. We want to be in a constant state of argument, and we want to be in a constant state of othering people, which is not the country that I know. It's not the country that I think we want to live in. And I think these next 2 years are going to be fascinating years. I think the Democrats are in for a rude awakening. And I think the Republicans are going to completely turn this country into something that they want it to be, which is not what I want it to be. I think there's a rise of religion in a lot of states that normally doesn't have a rise in religion. I can look up an article real quick so I don't sound like I'm completely losing my mind. Religion rise, New York. Yeah, that's from New York Times. Leftists are outraged that religion might be cool again. The roots, rise, and collapse of cult thought. Nope. Yeah, this one's from the New York Times. New York Times, an opinion piece by the New York Times. I don't know if I can read this whole thing. Yeah, I'm just going to read some of it. The title is New York's Hottest Club is the Catholic Church, August 9, 2022. As senior churchmen seek to make Catholicism palatable to modern day, members of a small but significant scene are turning to the ancient faith in defiance of liberal pieties. The scene is often associated with, quote, Dime Square, end quote, a downtown Manhattan neighborhood popular with the pandemic-weary Generation Z or Zoomer crowd, but is spread across a network of podcasts and upstart publications. Its sensibility is more transgressive than progressive. Many of its denizens profess to be apolitical. Others hold outre opinions, whether sincerely or as fashion statements. Reactionary motifs are chic. Trump hats and tradwife frocks. Monarchist and anti-feminist sentiments. Perhaps the ultimate expression of this contrarian aesthetic is the embrace of Catholicism. Urban trends can shape a culture, as millennial Brooklyn did in its heyday. The Dime Square scene is small, but its ascent highlights a culture-wide shift. Progressive morality, formulated in response to the remnants of America's Christian culture, was once a vanguard. By 2020, the year of lockdowns and BLM protests, progressivism has come to feel hegemonic in the social spaces occupied by young urban intellectuals. Traditional morality acquired a transgressive glamour. Disaffection with the progressive moral majority, combined with Catholicism's historic ability to accommodate culture subversion, has produced an in-your-face style of traditionalism. This is not your grandmother's church, and whether the new faithful are performing an act of theater or not, they have the chance to revitalize the church of young, educated Americans. Honor Levy, the fresh out of the Bennington writer who co-hosts the trendy podcast Wet Brain, recently converted to Catholicism and lets you know when she has unconfessed mortal sins on her conscience. This podcast beat is pop culture, literature, politics, and religion, including practical tips for warding off demons. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that there is a rise in Catholicism in this country, and I don't think that's good. There was once a gentleman by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche who said that God is dead. And he basically predicted the bloodshed of the 20th century. And what he was saying by God is dead is that once we live in a world, in a country, basically in a world, in a society where there's no God, we must replace it with something. And I think that's what we've seen in the past, 6 years, since 2016, 2015, 2014. We've seen a replacement of faith. And you may ask, what do we see the replacement of? And it's been replaced with ideologies. It's been replaced with political parties. It's been replaced with socialism, conservatism, liberalism. And these people have taken on these identities of who they are. There's this real issue in this country where you can't be multiple things. If you are a capitalist and you believe in small government, and you believe in freedom of speech, but if you take on any liberal viewpoints, such as you believe in free healthcare, you are now outcasted because you can't identify as a group, because groups are rigid. And if you don't play all the rules of that group, you don't have a team. And what happens when you don't have a team is you become angry at the system and you become confused. And I think there's a lot of people who are on the outside looking in, And since Biden is the current president, they feel disenfranchised and they will vote against him, not for him. I don't think presidents win because of popularity. I think they win because of hatred of the other president, of the current president or the incumbent president. And I think we've gotten ourselves in this situation. And the worst thing that's happening is this weird attack on freedom of speech. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's happening right now with like this weird thing where like there's like an attack on masculinity. It's there's always been this phrase of like toxic masculinity. I'm going to look up what this even means. What is toxic masculinity? Toxic. I don't even know what it means, and I'm a man. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men to behave in certain ways, and it's likely this affects all boys and men in some fashion. Toxic masculinity refers to the notion that some people's ideas of manliness perpetrates domination, homophobia, and aggression. For the love of man, boys will be boys. There's podcast on it now. There's podcasts and movies on it. This is embarrassing. Here's what I want to say about toxic masculinity. Here's what I want to say. The men out there who cause the most pain and suffering in people's lives are men who are weak. They're men who are not loved. They're men who have had love and lost loved. They're not men out there who are trying to cause harm to people for no reason. They have had harm caused to them. Men will always be in charge. And I don't mean that in like a patriarchal way, but I kind of do. Men are physically dominant. They can only be defeated by the men. No women can beat a man. If you put a whole military of women versus a whole military of men, men will always win. So we kind of live in this world where, yes, men do run the whole world, and that's just the reality of it. I used to take on this idea that toxic masculinity was a bad thing. I don't think it is. I think what you need to do as a guy, and this is for all my men out there, and if you're a woman, you can hear, and if you disagree, that's fine. You're not a man, so whatever. If you're a guy out there and you're angry and you are confused and you are upset and you feel like there's nowhere for you to go, you need to do a few things. You need to find one person in your life. I don't care if it's a girl. I don't care if it's a guy. And you need to understand that it is okay for you to talk to them. And I'm not saying this is toxic masculinity. I don't know what this is, but this is what men can do to help each other. And you need to find someone just to talk to. And you need to get a therapist. And you need to talk. You need to work out. You need to talk. And take responsibility for your own actions. There's been people out there who's recently been canceled. I'm gonna talk about this gentleman real quick. And I know this is very controversial, and I know he's been kind of deleted from the whole world, which I completely disagree with. Just say that up front. He goes by the name of Andrew Tate. And he's basically is a guy. He's a social media guy. And he goes out there and he tells men it's okay to be a man. Essentially, that's what he says. He's been accused of crimes against women. None of them have been, he hasn't been prosecuted for any of them. In my world, if you've been accused of anything, it doesn't matter until you've been proven guilty. So in my world, he didn't do anything. And I'm not saying that if he did something against women without their choice, without their consent, yeah, he's a piece of shit and he shouldn't be talking. But as far as I know, and I wasn't like a big fan of him, you know, But as far as I know, he was just a dude who spoke, and he spoke in a way that was aggressive to a lot of people, and he spoke in a way that basically told men it's okay to be a man. And I saw nothing wrong with that. And he ended up getting canceled. Instagram, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, Google, they took away all his platforms. And it's not about Andrew Tate. It's about this idea where we live in a world now where if you say anything that goes against the grain at all, they can just take away everything that you've ever worked on. You know, they tried to do that with Joe Rogan, and they couldn't do it. And it was very upsetting. And I think about it all the time. Thank God Joe Rogan sold his podcast, the rights of his podcast, to Spotify, because he would have been canceled a long time ago. And it's scary to think that these companies work directly with the government. I mean, Meta says they don't do that, but they take information from the FBI. Rogan had a guy on his podcast, Alex Berenson, who basically has evidence to show that Twitter employees were being told by the government to get rid of his platform because he was saying things during the height of the pandemic, like, I don't think masks work as much as people tell us they do, according to this study. I don't think the vaccines actually work as much as the government's telling us, and that these governments can work side by side with these companies and just completely get rid of somebody because they don't like what they say. And to me, that's when you do that, that makes me want to listen to that person more. And maybe I'm a contrarian, but like when I hear Andrew Tate's got canceled, I'm like, whoa, he must be saying something that goes completely against the narrative. And he was saying things. I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I thought he was a bit of a caricature. You know, I thought he spoke in hyperbole, and I thought he was kind of a douche. But that doesn't mean he can't talk. I don't agree with a lot of people out there who speak on the internet, but that's totally okay. They should be allowed to say what they want when they want. You know, Biden calls half the country fascist. If someone went on the podcast and called a half a country socialist, a communist, a Marxist, people would be pissed. You know, they run the chance of getting their podcast deleted. But if you're on the right side of history, or if you're on the right side of the current history, you can say what you want, when you want, how you want. But if you speak against what they want you to believe, then you're in a lot of trouble, and that scares me. You know, I mean, I know just for my podcast, not that big, only a couple thousand downloads a month. But for me, I don't curse anymore on my podcast, you know, because it affects who can view my podcast and who can't view my podcast. I don't, you know, it's just, we kind of are moving into this world where we are very careful what we say and what we don't say. And that's not a world where I feel like we should live in. I feel like you should be allowed to say what you want when you want. That's just my personal opinion. But let's kind of lighten the mood here a little bit. I just want to talk real quick about the weekend, this past weekend. You guys listen to Tuesday. This past weekend, I went home to visit my parents, and I did it out of a surprise. You know, living here with Taylor, I love it. I do. And I'm turning 26 this year, and it's weird. This is like the first birthday I've ever had in my life where I'm like, I kind of feel like an adult. You know, like I feel, you know, when you live near family and you live where you grew up, you always feel this sense of, and especially for someone like me who grew up in a family that was very close and everyone had each other's back. And I think when you move away, you always feel like there's a cushion for you to fall on. And I think when you live on your own, especially if you move another state away, you don't feel like that anymore. And you feel kind of like you're floating in space a little bit. It's not a bad thing, but it makes the birthday seem like, okay, this is my life. I can do what I want. I can choose what I want to do. And there's a power in that, but there's also a fear in that. And it feels like at this point in my life, every year that goes by, I'm like, what am I doing? You know, last week was a really rough week for me. I was having a rough week. I didn't feel good. I felt depressed. I felt sad. I felt, I'm somebody who, and I know a lot of people can probably relate to this, but I'm somebody who always feels like I'm not doing enough in this world. And I'm somebody who feels like I'm failing as a person. Um, I've always looked at myself as someone who's like a high performer and a high achiever. And I've never been somebody who has taken a step back and been proud of me. I've never been happy like with anything I've accomplished. But for like the past month, I haven't been happy with who I am. And it's scary. It's scary because you always have this idea that you will forever love yourself and you will forever be proud of who you are. And when moments in your life happen when you just kind of go like, I'm not I'm not happy with the person that I am. I feel like I'm underachieving. And you don't even know what that means. Like I don't even know what that means. Like I say it now, but I don't, like, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know. Like, this is it. This is it. This is my life. I'm going to build relationships. I'm going to love people. I'm going to lose people. I'm going to have moments of dopamine rushes. I'm going to make money. I'm going to lose money. I'm going to build friendships, lose friendships. This is it. And I think I'm just kind of coming to terms with that. That from here on out, I got to make every day amazing. I got to find goals and I got to accomplish them. And that's that. Like there's a magic that I think is like kind of fading from life a little bit. I'm being very honest here, and I don't want that. I want that magic back. I just don't know how to get it. And I think a lot of people can understand that. I've always been so scared of getting caught like in the trap. And not that I feel like I'm in the trap, but I feel like I'm like the tunnel's closing in a little bit. That I'm just kind of bowing down to this world. I don't want to do that. I want to fight. I want to fight. I want to enjoy my life. I want every birthday to be amazing. It's a weird feeling, and I almost feel like I'm just complaining, but it's been a rough week for me. It's been a rough last month for me. And I don't know if you guys can tell by like the way I'm talking or like the things I'm saying, but so, we're going home, we're seeing the family, and I just feel almost embarrassed to be home because I feel like I need to be farther in my life. And it's not even about, I'm not even comparing myself. Like, I don't even know what people around me do. Like, I have no idea. It's not even a comparison thing. It's just, I've always held myself to such a high standard, and I feel like I'm not living up to that standard. I've always had an excuse for everything in terms of like the reason why I'm not here is because of college. The reason why I'm not here is because I'm moving. And now I don't really have an excuse. Like, this is it. So it's just kind of been like an adjustment period for me. I know it's been hard on Taylor because she started a new job and she's kind of had to like deal with me. I don't think I'm depressed, but I'm definitely just kind of going through it right now. And I'll get through it. I'll be fine. Just sometimes in life you don't feel as good. And, I think the hardest part about that is just knowing that that's okay. Knowing that it's okay to just kind of have moments in your life where you're not feeling your best, that you wake up and you look at yourself and you're not happy with who you see looking back at you, and that's okay. Because just, you have those moments, but those moments come and go. And then you have moments where you feel great and you love yourself again and you love the people around you and you love life. I think I'm just crossing a bridge. I think every year around my birthday, I don't really like my birthday because it's a celebration of me, but if you don't feel like you deserve to be celebrated, then the celebration feels useless. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just in my head. I'm probably just in my head. I always get in my head. And that COVID thing really messed me up. Like, it really did mess me up. Like, I feel like it was playing tricks on me. Like, I feel like my mind wasn't like as sharp as it always has been. But But, I've chosen to do some things that I enjoy. I'm making Taylor watch Peaky Blinders again with me, which is by far my favorite show of all time. Like, Peaky Blinders is the best show of all time. Like, my entire Instagram feed is just Tommy Shelby, the character that Cillian Murphy plays. In the movie, they're making a movie, and Oppenheimer's coming out, and a lot of good things are happening for me. Like, I love watching Peaky Blinders. I love reading Game of Thrones. I'm going to read the Fire and Stone or Fire and Ice, which is the one that they currently are releasing TV shows each week, which I kind of like that they're doing that, because I remember when Game of Thrones first came out, I don't know when that was, like 2013 to like 2018, 2019. There was because I didn't watch it till all 6 seasons were out, or 5, 7, whatever the seasons were. I think there's the same number of seasons for Game of Thrones that there is for Peaky Blinders. But I remember when it was coming out, there was this, the whole world was watching, which was nice. Like, every week you would hear someone talk about the episode, where I kind of like that, because with a lot of shows now, they release entire series like on a streaming platform. Like with Peaky Blinders, for example, they released the last season all at once, and I binged it within 2 days. I like that. But with Game of Thrones, they kind of do this thing where they release one episode and then another episode the next week. And I have not read that book yet, because Fire and Ice is a prequel. I think he wrote it after the Game of Thrones, but it is about the Targaryens and family members that were around before, like the Baratheons and the Lannisters and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a prequel to the Game of Thrones book. And the author George R.R. Martin, there's 6 seasons. I think he wrote 5 books, and he's been working on the 6th book, I think, since like 2010. Like, he's been working on it forever, and he hasn't released it yet. And then he's set for his 7th book. So I think what they wanted to do was to continue making the Game of Thrones, but he hasn't put out the new book yet. So they're doing Fire and Ice, but I want to read the book before I go ahead and watch the TV show, just because I've never done that. I've always watched the show and then read the books, like I did that with Harry Potter. And then I know on Amazon there's Lord of the Rings that's coming out. I think the older I get, the more I'm starting to kind of enjoy like the little things, like TV shows, which is something I've never really been into. But like, there's something about Peaky Blinders that just makes me feel at home, which is weird because it's a violent show. It's a sad show. It's a lot of heartbreak. But it does give me like this sense of like peace, almost like this tranquility that kind of just runs through my body. And it's something that I've always wanted to share with Taylor, but the show is scary, and it takes a lot out of you. Like, we have this rule where we're only watching it during the day, because when I was watching it by myself, like, my anxiety was high, and I was watching like before I went to bed like a lunatic, and we can't do that with Taylor, because she just frankly wouldn't be able to go to bed. We can't have that. So we've been watching it about 2 hours a day during the day. I love doing it with Taylor. She's amazing. She holds me together. Without her, I would be I'd be like a free floating jellyfish just out there in the world, just confused at all times. I think sometimes in life you get lucky with people you find, and sometimes you get really lucky, and I got really lucky with this person. She's incredible. But that's it, guys. I'm gonna bring this podcast to an end. It's right at about an hour. I just want to give everyone just a big thank you. I know most people don't make it this far, if anyone makes it this far in the podcast. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who continuously supports me on this journey. I'm planning to do this for as long as I can. It's something I enjoy so much. I'm looking for jobs. I'm looking for remote positions. I've applied to a lot of jobs. I've gotten a couple interviews here and there. But I think the backbone of me as a person is creative, and this is something I feel creative on. This is something I can do each and every single week, and people tune in and listen. And I didn't think 3 years ago I mean, I would say I would still be doing it 3 years from now, but I truly didn't believe it. I truly didn't believe that people from different continents and different parts of the world that I can't even pronounce would enjoy my show. Like, I just would have never believed that. But I'm in a position where people do, and it's all because of you. And I know I get on here once a week for an hour and I talk. I share my emotions. I share my feelings. I share my opinions, right or wrong. They change like the seasons. But after 270 episodes, I can say that I don't regret anything and that I've enjoyed every single moment. And I'm sorry for the times where I didn't put out any episodes. I apologize for the moments where I might have went MIA. But I'm so thankful that everyone still listens to the podcast to this day, because it takes a lot of work, takes a lot out of me. Sometimes I do all the marketing, I do all the editing, I do the filming, I do the talking, I do everything, so it is, at times it does feel slightly overwhelming, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I've created a lot of things, I've done a lot of things, clothing business, podcasting, gaming, which is something I truly want to get back into. I really want to get a PS5 and start gaming again and doing like commentaries and doing like Twitch and stuff like that. But because of people that listen to my stuff, it's the reason why I keep on doing it. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for listening to the episode today. I hope you have a beautiful week. I hope you have a beautiful day. Next time you guys see me, next episode, I'm probably just going to talk about my birthday, what I did for it, visiting my family, and just, getting into, I guess, like cheesy things, stuff that people don't really usually talk about. I do want to say one more thing before I go. There's a bunch of comedians I love that I really like listening to, that I find to be absolutely hilarious. But if you guys are on Netflix, there's a comedian out there who does a podcast. His name is Tim Dillon. He is, I think, the best comedian around as of right now. He is a gay New Yorker from Long Island who's aggressive, who is super intelligent. He is super hyperbolic. His satire is the best. And he has a special on Netflix called, I think it's, I don't really know. So I just type in Tim Dillon. It doesn't really matter what it's called, but it's hilarious. I think it's like the best special I've heard all year, if not like the best comic special I've heard ever. He just goes in so hard. He does this one bit about like cancer that when I heard, I was like, I can't believe he just said that. But like, I think like we live in a world right now where everything is taken so serious. I think comedians right now are like kind of like the line that's needed right now. I think there's a real value to having comedians to make fun of everybody and everything. A jester was part of the king's council because even the king needs to be made fun of. And I remember when Trump refused to do the that dinner where they all make fun of each other, I was like, what a bitch move. When he decided not to get made fun of, my respect levels from him went down. Joe Biden did it. My respect levels for him went up. I guess my last words are going to be, this is America. We have a lot of flaws. We don't always do things correctly. We're not always making the right decisions. But at the end of the day, I think we are free. We have a constitution that I think allows the potential for equality to be there. And we're powerful. And I think we will turn the corner. I hope the next president, whoever it is, Trump or DeSantis, maybe somebody else, I truly think if the Democrats want to have a chance, they got to put Michelle Obama in there, and I think she could do a splendid job. I think she could definitely win the Democratic nominee, and I think she would definitely give anybody a run for their money. And, I think Barack Obama was probably the best president we ever had. Yes, he killed probably the most people that any president's ever killed with his missiles and, rockets that he sent into the Middle East. But if they want to have a chance against DeSantis or Trump, that's who they're going to have to put in, because I like Tulsi Gabbard the most, but they clearly won't put her in. But yeah, guys, that's it. America's awesome. We're awesome. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On Spotify, please subscribe. And on Apple Music, please leave it a written review. Thank you guys so much for listening. Peace out and see ya. Have a beautiful day.